Hey to everyone, and welcome back to One Up. It's Uthapan Dragon, and in this series I provide you guys with some gameplay and my honest thoughts and opinions on games that I've played. And today we're going to be taking a look at Middle-earth: Shadow of War. Now remember guys, if the video gave you guys some valuable insight in the game that you were contemplating playing, maybe make you want to play the game, maybe it told you not to play the game. Whatever the case might be, hit that like and subscribe button. It helps me out a ton and it is entirely free. And with all that good stuff out of the way, let's get busy. So Middle-earth: Shadow of War is based on The Lord of the Rings. Now I've watched all of The Lord of the Rings on multiple occasions. I've watched all of The Hobbits on multiple occasions. I really loved it. The game is also a part of a genre that I really enjoy. So even though the game is composed of two things that I really enjoy, I've never in all my years of gaming come across a game that made me feel so on the fence about it quite like this. I truly didn't know whether to like the game or absolutely despise it for taking what was approximately 60 hours of my time. So the game is developed by Monolith Productions and it is a third-person action-adventure RPG. And you play as Talion, who is possessed by a very powerful ringwraith, Celebrimbor, giving him supernatural abilities which aids him on his quest to face a surplus of orcs and Sauron. The game is open world and you can go just about anywhere and do anything. And the game's map is very big, with 5 POIs, all of them being composed of dungeons, castles, settlements, forests, snowlands, and all the nice Lord of the Rings stuff. As beautiful and as immersive as it all was, I'm pretty sure by now you can see that the graphics was really dogbox. I did expect more from it, the graphics, given that this is a sequel to Shadow of Mordor, and I am currently playing this on PS5. To put some icing on the bread, the game's controls were really bad as well. And no, you couldn't change it, because for the life of me I really couldn't understand how these control settings were supposed to work in the first place. Moving Talion around was really painful and always felt like a slog, because not only did he walk like he had all the time in the world, but performing any input with him was just truly very bad. I mean, look at this. There was zero fluency in his movement and the movement of the camera was just disturbing. But even that wasn't what kept me on the fence about this game. What kept me from fully enjoying this game, which really had so much of potential, is how bad the game's development was. So the game starts off in the city of Minas Morgul being under attack, and you are tasked with taking back control of it. All that's good and well, but my problem with this is how the game just throws at you an overwhelming amount of stuff to do all at once, which until Act 3 of the game, none of what you're doing makes any sense or has any rhyme or reason to it. You're basically just doing it because the game told you to do it. But to further explain this, we need to take a look at the combat of the game. So the combat of this game is basically a hack and slash, and really was the main focal point of the game's purpose, even with its diverse amount of things the game offered. The reason why I say this is because there was a ton of combat to be had, which did have some rather cool elements to it, but generally felt below average to me throughout, because even though it had some very cool moments, the rest of it just felt plain and repetitive and did get rather annoying from time to time. So Talion comes equipped with a sword, a dagger, and a bow and arrow, which could sometimes be replaced by a throwable hammer, and some rather cool armor to keep him cozy. All these items were upgradable, and you could constantly find these items by completing certain side quests or by defeating orc commanders. Now in my opinion, I really don't like these kind of systems in games, because even though there's a bunch of stuff that you can collect, it also totally removes the value of the stuff that you already have. Like for example, instead of having 3 swords that you can find throughout the game, each one being more powerful and cool than the one you had before, which leaves you with something to look forward to, something to grind for. With this game's gear system, you're constantly upgrading your gear by swapping it out, and then not knowing which one to choose from is just a very chaotic system. Now, I'm well aware that a lot of games have this system, but in my experience, all those weapons and gear vary greatly. In this game, all the gear you collect is basically just a reskin with higher stats. But anyway, back to the gear of the game. All of this gear also scales with rarity. The higher the rarity, the better the stats and status elements the weapon comes with. Also giving Talion certain benefits in combat by enhancing his powers and abilities. And Talion did come with some rather cool abilities. He could scale really high buildings and mountains and then jump off them without taking any fall damage. He also had a spirit dash that lasted for a very short while. You can also have the Wraith perform finishes, stealth takedowns, and also help him deflect attacks from multiple enemies while he fought someone else in a rather chaotic freefall. And that's what the combat was. You getting rushed by a bunch of different enemies all at once. Now this did feel cool when you had a bunch of helpers, but 90% of the time you're on your own. And you got absolutely belted. Because even though you could have the best gear in the game, it still felt inconsequential. And that being paired with probably the worst healing system in the history of gaming, it truly made combat very annoying. And honestly, most of the time I tried to avoid Fallout combat by using the game's stealth system. Now, before you begin to judge the combat as harshly as I am, the combat did actually become worthwhile, and the game actually started to make sense only after Act 3 when you acquired your ring from Shelob. And this is when the game actually became very addictive to me. Because once you acquire the ring, you could use it to dominate orcs and various other creatures, making them yours to command and having them fight on your side. And this added so much of value and depth to the game, not only to the combat, but to the overall purpose of the game. So with the ring you could dominate normal orcs immediately. With orc commanders and creatures of the game, you could only dominate them after doing damage to them in combat until they became broken. Now the orc commanders you dominated became a part of your army. Everything else you dominated was just basically temporary. So after you dominate these orc commanders, you can then equip them as your bodyguards or make them bodyguards of other orcs you dominated. You can also have them attack other orc commanders. Now after you've collected all the orc commanders of that region, you can then attack the fortress of the enemy overlord. Each of the POIs has a fortress that's run by an orc overlord. After you collect all your orc commanders and upgrade your attack siege with some really cool stuff like siege beasts and caragors and graugs, you can then attack the POI's fortress and make it yours. After that is done, you can then send your orc commanders into the fight pit to fight other orc commanders, which not only gave you better rewards, but level them up if they win, making them more powerful and unique. But if they lost, they died. But you can then just go on ahead and dominate that orc that killed him and add him to your army. There is, or maybe actually used to be, a great online platform in the game that you could utilize to engage in online siege battles and challenge other enemies or commanders. From my experience, it did look like there was still a small population of gamers that did these online sieges and fighting pits, but I didn't really spend any time doing that. Now all these orc commanders are very different, and this is one of the few things I liked about the game. I could see that the developers put in a ton of effort into the enemy design. They all are very different. They have different classes ranging from berserkers to trackers to tricksters to marauders, and the list goes on. But because of these classes, they all have different advantages and disadvantages. They also scaled with rarity. Higher rarity orcs had special abilities that aided them in combat. But what stuck out to me is their different personalities and dialogues. They all had something different to say depending on the situation or when in the game you encounter them, which I found very interesting. So apart from using the ring to dominate orc commanders, it also unlocked a section of your skill tree that allowed you one of 3 creatures to protect you. Either a Graug, a dragon, or a Caragor. Not only did I think this was really cool, but it definitely made combat a lot easier and manageable. Especially the Graug. The Graug is my favorite. Not to mention, all of these creatures were mountable. The skill tree did have great stuff like this from time to time that really changed combat in your favor, but not all the skills were worthwhile because I literally only used certain ones throughout the game. And to top that all off, it did take a lot of grinding to level up in order to gain skill points. So overall, the combat and its systems are just below average to me. Even though it looked kinda cool from time to time and had some rather satisfying bits like the bow for example, the rest of it was just truly underdeveloped and really felt like the developers didn't put much effort into testing it, because you almost always got belted by a never-ending line of orcs and creatures that most of the time, if you didn't have your bodyguards or summons, you would die to those enemies. And I cannot stress enough truly how bad the healing system was. As I said, the only reason to why I actually started getting into combat was to acquire orc captains in order to attack fortresses and progress in the storyline. There wasn't any other reason for acquiring your army because there was only 2 boss fights and you couldn't actually use your summons. The rest of the fights were basically just against orcs and Nazgul, kinda like mini bosses. The game did however have a rather good story that it followed, that all the main and side missions and even the little stuff that you were tasked to collect tied up too well. The story did however only start to make sense to me after Act 3. There was a good side and main mission structure, which did have an open world progression most of the time. Though I must say, the side missions and the challenges really did feel very tedious from the beginning of the game. So it's not as if it got any better. Most of it did feel like just a way for them to make the game feel busy. But one good thing that came from the side quests and the main missions were the interactions that you had with the game's NPCs. They were really well designed and all of them added a lot of value to the story due to the unique personalities and effectiveness in the missions itself. I was truly surprised that not only were the NPCs purposeful, but they were really effective in the missions you had because they didn't get in your way and they actually aided you in combat. But that is honestly why I felt so on the fence about this game. It really tanked in a lot of its aspects but had some value in other aspects. The game overall felt very rushed and all over the place. I really wish they stuck to a purpose in this game because it started off as an empty hack and slash RPG but ended up as some type of in-depth tower defense. The game really did have some rather cool aspects to it that incorporated some really good gaming fun. There is a ton of room for improvement in this game and I really hope that the developers take the necessary measures into creating the next edition. Because I honestly thought this is such a great idea for a game, given that the fan base of Lord of the Rings is massive. Replayability will actually struggle in this one because even with its DLCs, I really don't see any reason to want to replay this game. So with all that being said, I am going to give this one a 5 out of 10. I mean, it's a little above what I should give the game in terms of rating, but I just can't ignore how much I enjoyed the game after Act 3. The game did have some rather good qualities to it and was really entertaining from time to time. I am, however, looking forward to the developer's next edition, if there is one, because I really enjoyed Lord of the Rings and this game did make me feel somewhat immersed in it. And that, my friends, is going to bring us to the end of this video. I gave you guys some gameplay, I gave you all my thoughts and opinions in the game so that you guys could do the same in the comment section. I am currently trying to develop a new series for the channel. So if you guys are interested in finding out what that is, hit that subscribe button, hit that like button. As I said guys, it is entirely free and it helps me out more than you would know. And it'll bring you guys to my next video. And with that being said, I'll see you there.